2 in the morning. You have been awake since yesterday morning. Your hands still work, your eyes still focus, and if you asked yourself right now, you would probably say you feel fine. You are not fine. By every measurable standard, you are already worse than legally drunk, and the most unsettling part is that you have no way of knowing it from the inside. That is the strange thing about going without sleep. It does not announce itself the way an injury does. There is no single moment where a switch flips and you become impaired. Instead, the body starts quietly withdrawing. Researchers have mapped in some detail. Some of what happens in the first day is measurable and almost mundane. Some of what happens by the third day looks, by any clinical definition, like a break from reality. Almost none of it happens the way you would expect, and almost none of it happens with your permission. Underneath the whole process sits one very small molecule. While you are awake, a byproduct called adenosine steadily accumulates in your brain, building for as long as your neurons keep firing. A running tally of exactly how much waking activity your brain has done since you last slept. The climbing level of adenosine is what produces the physical sensation of sleep pressure, the heaviness that eventually makes staying awake feel like an act of will. Caffeine does not add energy to that system. It works by occupying the same receptors adenosine would otherwise bind to, blocking the signal without clearing the backlog sitting behind it. The tally keeps accumulating regardless. You have only muted the alarm telling you it exists. Start with the first day, then, because the first day is where the deficit is most invisible. Researchers studying driver performance found that people who had been awake for 17 to 19 hours performed worse on the road than people who were legally drunk, specifically worse than a blood alcohol level of 0.05%, the legal driving limit across much of Western Europe and Australia. Push a little further and the comparison gets starker. By 21 hours awake, performance had degraded to a level equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.08%, the legal limit in Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. You have not touched a drink. Your body is behaving as though you had. It gets stranger. In laboratory testing, 24 hours of continuous wakefulness was enough to change which math problems people chose to attempt. Given a choice of difficulty, sleep-deprived participants picked the easier ones. And here is the detail that matters most. They did not report the task as feeling any easier, and they did not say they were trying any less hard. Their own sense of their effort had not changed at all. Only the ambition of what they were willing to take on had quietly scaled itself down, underneath their own awareness. You are not just slower after a day without sleep. You are making smaller decisions, and you do not know it. Meanwhile, something else is already happening, in flashes too brief for you to notice, and it does not wait politely for a specific hour on the clock to arrive. It is called a microsleep. A sudden, temporary episode of actual sleep, lasting only a few seconds, rarely more than 15 of them, and briefly lose consciousness. Your eyelids may droop and close slowly. Your head may nod. Electrically, the pattern in your brain shifts, the faster rhythm of alertness giving way, for those few seconds, to the slower rhythm associated with sleep. Regions of the brain tied to wakefulness quiet down. Regions tied to sleep switch on. Then it is over, and you are back. Here is the detail that should concern you more than any of the numbers. People experiencing a microsleep typically remain completely unaware that it happened. They believe they were awake the entire time, or at most that they briefly lost focus. The gap gets edited out, seamlessly, by a brain that is no longer a fully reliable narrator of its own state. Underneath all of this, your body's stress chemistry is shifting too. Ordinarily, sleep is when a great deal of unglamorous maintenance work gets done. It is when muscle tissue repairs itself, when new tissue grows, when proteins are synthesized, when the hormones that govern growth and metabolic regulation are released, and when the day gets consolidated. None of that maintenance shift gets skipped quietly. Staying awake keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the same system behind a racing heart, running for longer than it is supposed to. It keeps producing noradrenaline and adrenaline. Markers of inflammation in the blood begin to climb. And natural killer cells, among the fastest acting defenders your immune system has, become fewer in number and less active. The body starts treating the wakefulness itself as the emergency. Your relationship with pain changes as well. sensitivity, once after a normal night of sleep and again after a single night with none at all. After that one missed night, the temperature that registered as painfully cold arrived several degrees sooner than it had the day before. The amount of pressure needed to register as painful dropped, and the amount of pressure a person could tolerate before calling it intolerable dropped as well. Most tellingly, the researchers measured something called conditioned pain modulation, the nervous system's own built-in mechanism for damping down a pain signal once. After just one missed night, that damping mechanism was, in the researchers' own words, significantly impaired, its usual pain-relieving effect largely gone. You were not only more tired. You had quietly lost part of your own built-in ability to tell yourself that something did not need to hurt quite this much. By roughly 35 hours awake, in controlled brain imaging research, something even more specific gives way. In a study led by the sleep researcher Matthew Walker, one group of people was shown a series of emotionally disturbing images after a normal night of sleep, while a second group saw the same images after a night with none at all. In the sleep-deprived group, the amygdala, the brain's alarm center for threat and negative emotion, was more than 60% more reactive to those images. At the same time, the connection between the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex, the region that normally reaches in and talks that alarm back down, had come apart. Walker described the resulting state in plain terms. Without sleep, he said, the brain reverts back to a more primitive pattern of activity, becoming unable to put emotional experiences into context. Elsewhere, he put the stakes even more bluntly, saying that sleep deprivation fractures the brain mechanisms that regulate key aspects of our mental health. Whatever you are feeling after a bad night starts to arrive without the usual scaffolding that would normally help you size it correctly. It is not that emotions get louder. It is that the machinery meant to put them in context has quietly gone offline. And then, if the deprivation continues, something stranger than fatigue begins. A research review that pooled findings from 21 separate studies, covering 760 participants who went without sleep for anywhere between 24 hours and 11 consecutive nights, found a strikingly consistent, almost scheduled progression. Perceptual distortions, along with anxiety, irritability, a sense of detachment from oneself, and disorientation about time, tend to begin within the first 24 to 48 hours of sleep loss. Push past that, and complex hallucinations and disordered thinking emerge somewhere between 48 and 90 hours. Delusions, in the cases studied, did not appear until after 72 hours. By the third day without sleep, the review found hallucinations occurring across all three of the senses the researchers tracked. Vision was affected most consistently, showing up in 90% of the studies reviewed. Touch, the somatosensory sense, was affected in 52%. Hearing, in 33%. Taken together, the researchers described the resulting presentation as resembling an acute psychotic state, produced in otherwise healthy people, entirely by the absence of sleep. No drug did this. No injury did this. No infection did this. An ordinary biological process, one your body performs every single night without asking your permission, was simply withheld for long enough, and the mind began to lose its grip on which of its own perceptions were real. What is striking, sitting with all of this, is how orderly the collapse actually is. It does not happen all at once, and it does not happen randomly. A single molecule quietly keeps score in the background from the moment you wake up. Judgment narrows first, quietly, while you still feel entirely like yourself. Attention starts failing in seconds-long gaps you cannot detect from the inside. The chemistry of stress rises to treat wakefulness itself as a threat to be managed. Emotional context breaks down, the brain's alarm system running hot with its usual restraint disconnected, before perception itself does. And only after all of that, only after day upon day of the debt going unpaid, does perception start to give way to. Sleep, it turns out, was never the passive, optional pause it can feel like at 11 at night. It was the maintenance shift. And a body cannot skip a shift like that indefinitely without the whole structure slowly falling out of code. A brief and genuine note before we close. Everything described here comes from monitored laboratory and field research on total sleep deprivation, conducted under careful observation. It is not an invitation to test your own limits, and it does not describe a diagnosed sleep disorder. If sleep itself has become a struggle, a doctor or a sleep specialist is the right person to help you find out why. I would genuinely like an answer to. What is the longest you have ever gone without sleep, and what is the strangest thing your own body or mind did during it? Tell me in the comments. And if you have ever climbed out of a bath or a pool and looked down at fingers gone wrinkled like raisins, certain it was just water soaking into your skin, the next short is going to tell you that is not what happened at all. I will see you there.